Hello and welcome to this edition of World at War. My name is Mohammed Saleh. Donald Trump has pulled the trigger after having campaigned as the president of peace who was dead opposed to America's involvement in the foreign forever wars. The American peace president, through his Operation Epic Fury, has unleashed what could effectively turn out to be the mother of all wars in West Asia. When the missiles start to fly, all bets are off. On the 28th of February, the United States, along with its greatest ally, the State of Israel, staged a wave of air bombings across at least 30 different targets in Iran. In a statement that the American president put out, his objective was pretty clear. He wants the Iranian people to rise up and take charge of their government once the United States is done with the campaign. But oftentimes in war, you can be certain of only one thing, and that is when to pull the trigger to fire the first bullet. And after that, it is difficult to predict the consequences. But the United States and Iran have been preparing for this moment for decades. When the 12-day-long Iran-Israel war ended in an uneasy stalemate in 2025, what was certain was that the hostilities will resume again. And this time, there are no clear and easy off-ramps for either side. Our next report tells you more. There was smoke and chaos. From 8 o'clock in the morning, the Americans and the Israelis staged wave after wave of attacks on Iran. And in a matter of minutes, more than 30 targets, which included the presidential palace and the Iranian government security establishment, were bombed by the American and Israeli missile strikes. After having mobilized the biggest military armada in West Asia since the botched Iraq invasion, the American peace president has pulled the trigger.
A short time ago, the United States military began major combat operations in Iran. Our objective is to defend the American people by eliminating imminent threats from the Iranian regime, a vicious group of very hard, terrible people. Its menacing activities directly endanger the United States, our troops, our bases overseas, and our allies throughout the world. For 47 years, the Iranian regime has chanted death to America and waged an unending campaign of bloodshed and mass murder, targeting the United States, our troops, and the innocent people in many, many countries.
For the second time in a span of less than 12 months, Israel and the United States have begun a military confrontation at a time when diplomatic negotiations have been underway. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian is reportedly unscathed in the attack, while the whereabouts of the Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who had been living in different places for the last several weeks, are unknown. Iran hit back in a matter of hours. Wave after wave of Iranian missiles and drones targeted different American military bases in the region. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps has claimed that all Israeli and American military targets in the Middle East have been struck by Iranian missiles, further stating that all American assets throughout the region are now considered legitimate targets for the Iranian army. Bahrain has reported an Iranian missile attack that targeted the headquarters of the US Navy's 5th Fleet. At least a dozen explosions were reported in Qatar, which hosts the Al Udeid Air Base of the Americans, which is the biggest air base the Americans have in the region. And there were sirens that wailed over the Kuwaiti skies as Iranian missiles and drones were spotted. Every one of the GCC nations, with the exception of Oman, was targeted. Airspace over Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, the United Arab Emirates, Lebanon, Bahrain and Jordan has been shot. Iran's Supreme National Security Council has urged the Iranians to keep calm. In a Tehran newscast carried by the state TV, the statement said that the operations by the United States and Israel will continue over Tehran and other cities.
According to the information obtained from these two corrupt regimes, their operations in Tehran and some cities will continue. Therefore, as much as possible, while maintaining calm, travel to other centers and cities to stay safe from the evils of these two regimes.
Terming these attacks as Operation Roaring Lion, the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu did not mince words about what Israel seeks to achieve through its attacks.
This is your chance to establish a new and free Iran. Take your fate into your own hands. Raise your head, lift your eyes to the sky. Our forces are there, pilots of the free world. Everyone is coming to your aid. Help has arrived. And I believe the day is near when Israel and free Iran will hold hands in favor of security and peace, in favor of progress and prosperity.
In Israel, the hospitals have been shifted underground. The Israeli military leadership has said that this war will go on for as long as it is needed to achieve the objective of the operation.
This is an operation against a concrete threat that was directed at us. In recent months, we identified that the regime continues to advance offensive plans against the State of Israel, centered on the restoration and acceleration of ballistic missile production, the production, fortification, and concealment of the nuclear program, and the continued formation and promotion of the plan to destroy Israel.
What could have been achieved through diplomacy and negotiations is being pursued by flexing the strength of their respective missiles. West Asia, which had remained on the brink, has now gone over the cliff. And in this dizzying fall of missiles and drones, a new West Asia will be forged. More than one regime change could end up playing out as a consequence of the Iran war. Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu have lit the fuse. But what no one can predict is the scale of the conflagration that will consume West Asia and the number of regimes that could end up getting singed in a war that could rewrite the balance of power in the Middle East. Over the past week, there's been a major escalation between the South Asian neighbors, Pakistan and Afghanistan, which has brought them to an all-out war. First, on the intervening night of the 21st and the 22nd of February, Pakistan launched multiple airstrikes on eastern Afghanistan, in which the Taliban said that at least about 18 people were killed, including women and children. The overnight attacks, which Pakistan said were in retaliation to the recent suicide bombings, were the most extensive ones since the deadly cross-border clashes last October, which resulted in the death of over 70 people from both sides and wounded dozens more. A couple of days after the airstrikes, the Afghan and the Pakistani forces engaged in some fresh clashes along their troubled frontier, with both sides accusing the other of being the agent provocateur. On Thursday night, the Afghan forces attacked the Pakistani border troops in retaliation for the airstrikes, claiming to have inflicted some significant casualties. Within hours, Pakistan responded by bombing targets in the Afghan capital Kabul and the provinces of Kandahar and Paktika. Given the sharp surge in the hostilities, the United Nations and the International Committee of the Red Cross have called for an immediate de-escalation, while diplomats in China, Saudi Arabia and Qatar have begun their efforts to try and calm the tensions. Our next report tells you more.
The South Asian neighbors, Pakistan and Afghanistan, who share a 2,574-kilometer-long mountainous border, have been locked in a bitter dispute ever since the Taliban stormed back to power in Kabul in August 2021. Islamabad, facing a rise in attacks on its security forces, has repeatedly accused the Taliban government of providing a haven to anti-Pakistan militant groups, including the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan and the Islamic State Khorasan province, a claim refuted by the Taliban. According to Pakistan's Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, on Saturday around midnight, Islamabad carried out intelligence-based selective targeting of 7 terrorist camps and hideouts near the Pakistan-Afghanistan border. The ministry claimed that the strikes targeted members of the banned militant group Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, along with their affiliates and the Islamic State Khorasan province, further adding that the overnight strikes were a retributive response to recent suicide bombings in Pakistan by terror groups it said were sheltered by Kabul. While Kabul has repeatedly denied allowing militants to use Afghan territory to stage attacks in Pakistan, villagers rummaging through rubble and debris of buildings destroyed in Pakistani strikes questioned the logic of targeting ordinary civilians.
It was bombed, and everything was destroyed. The house was completely destroyed. My children and family members were there. My father and my sons were there. All of them were killed. Out of 22 family members, only 4 of us survived. Our guests were also here, and they are injured.
People here were ordinary civilians. There were children and women. We asked the world to come and see who they were, see whether they were ordinary people or someone else.
The Taliban government not only refuted Pakistan's claim of more than 80 militants being killed in the operation, but instead claimed that the bombardment of eastern Nangarhar and Paktika provinces targeting civilians was a criminal act.
In continuation of previous aggressions, the Pakistani military regime has once again carried out airstrikes on several civilian areas in Afghanistan's Nangarhar and Paktika provinces, including a madrasa and numerous civilian homes. As a result, dozens of innocent civilians, including women and children, were martyred and wounded. Attacks on civilian targets and religious centers are clear evidence of the Pakistani army's intelligence and security failures, and such repeated aggressions will never conceal their internal failures.
Talking tough, Afghanistan's defense ministry said that it will deliver an appropriate and calculated response to the Pakistani strikes. A couple of days after deadly airstrikes on Afghanistan by Pakistan escalated tensions, Afghan and Pakistani forces engaged in new clashes along their troubled border region, with each side accusing the other of being the instigator. On Thursday night, Afghan forces launched a major offensive on Pakistani military bases near the border, claiming to have killed 55 Pakistani soldiers and captured several others, while putting the death toll among Afghan troops at 13. Pakistan responded swiftly within hours by bombing major cities in Afghanistan and declaring a state of war with its neighbor. Reportedly, 29 locations across Afghanistan had been subjected to aerial targeting, in which Pakistan claimed to have killed 297 Afghan Taliban and militants. Earlier, Islamabad had said that 12 of its soldiers had been killed. Relations between the neighbors have been on a downward spiral in recent months. Land border crossings have been largely shut since cross-border clashes erupted last October, in which around 70 people were killed on both sides in the worst violence witnessed since Taliban's ascension to power in 2021, following the withdrawal of foreign forces. Since the October violence, a lasting deal has proven to be elusive despite several rounds of talks in Doha and Istanbul. Reportedly, the security issues have proven to be a major sticking point. Saudi Arabia intervened this month, mediating the release of 3 Pakistani soldiers captured by Afghanistan in October. But this recent escalation in hostilities seems to have negated those positives and has left Islamabad facing pressure on both borders.
Nemesio El Mencho Oseguera, the 59-year-old leader of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, was one of the most feared names in the Mexican organized crime scene. On the 22nd of February, in a major crackdown, aided by the U.S. intelligence, El Mencho was wounded in a shootout with soldiers in the town of Tapalpa in the Jalisco state, and subsequently died while being flown to the capital, Mexico City. According to the Mexican Defense Secretary Ricardo Trevilla, the key to locating Oseguera was one of his girlfriends. Reportedly, during the raid on Oseguera and in the subsequent clashes, at least 27 members of the security forces, 46 suspected criminals, and 1 civilian were killed, bringing the nation to a complete standstill that's long been suffering from the menace of narco violence. Our next report tells you more.
In the blood-soaked history of Mexican organized crime, the 22nd of February is a date that will be etched on the collective psyche of Mexicans for a long, long time. Nemesio El Mencho Oseguera, the head of one of the most feared and dangerous cartels in modern Mexico, the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, who rose to the top with ambition, aggression and fearsome brutality, was brought down early on Sunday. Washington has classified the CJNG as a terrorist organization and accuses it of sending cocaine, heroin, methamphetamine and fentanyl into the United States. Reportedly, US intelligence was instrumental in tracking down the kingpin and the founding member of CJNG, lending the mega operation a sense of cross-border cooperation that could benefit both governments. Locals in Mexico's Tapalpa recounted the terrifying morning that the powerful drug lord Nemesio Oseguera, who had a $15 million bounty on his head, was captured in a police raid, further hoping that the infamous episode will not hurt the tourism.
It was terrifying. It was terrifying. So many gunshots. You could see the helicopters, you could see the planes. I counted 3 helicopters and 1 plane, and you could hear the machine guns, air to ground, ground to air. And outside, 4 men carrying long guns passed by. I don't know whether they were military or from the opposing group, but we saw them walking around there. It felt strange that at 7 in the morning on a Sunday in Tapalpa, you could hear helicopters, and I figured it had to be some kind of operation. Why? Well, people knew. There were rumors that this guy, El Mencho, was already in the area, so I assumed that was the case.
The news of Oseguera's capture and subsequent death triggered a swift response from his cartel members, who blocked roads in as many as 20 states and torched vehicles and businesses. Taking advantage of the ensuing chaos and mayhem, at least 23 people escaped when their jail in Jalisco was attacked in a hail of gunfire by criminal groups. Over the weekend, as cartel members went on the rampage, fearful residents went into hiding and tourists took shelter in their hotels.
In Jalisco, 6 attacks were recorded, in which 25 members of the National Guard, a prison guard, and an officer from the State Attorney General's office sadly lost their lives. At the hands of these cowardly criminals, a woman lost her life. 30 members of organized crime, 30 criminals, were also counted among those who lost their lives in these attacks.
A semblance of calm seemed to return to the streets on Monday, though many businesses remained shut. Long queues were formed outside the few small stores that remained open, particularly tortilla shops, as anxious residents sought to stock up on supplies. In Jalisco's state capital, Guadalajara, schools and even pharmacies remained closed, and most public transportation was suspended. The resort city of Puerto Vallarta, popular with US tourists, was gripped by the weekend violence. The element of US intelligence in the operation that brought down the feared drug lord is an indicator of President Sheinbaum's administration's willingness to work together with Washington in pursuit of the same goals. For the time being, Mexicans processing the death of El Mencho must be hoping to not get caught in this cycle of violence.
Israel and the Lebanese group Hezbollah had agreed to a US-brokered ceasefire back in November 2024 that intended to end more than a year of cross-border exchanges. But since then, the Israeli military has continued to carry out attacks on Lebanon, ostensibly targeting the weapon storage facilities and training centers belonging to the Hezbollah. Now, according to the United Nations, more than 300 people have been killed in repeated Israeli attacks, including 127 civilians. In the latest, in a series of ceasefire violations, a 16-year-old boy was killed and 29 others were wounded in Israeli strikes on Lebanon's Bekaa Valley. Just last week, at least 12 people were killed in Israeli attacks on the Bekaa Valley and the Ain al-Helweh Palestinian refugee camp near the city of Sidon. And once again, Israel has claimed that it was targeting Hezbollah and Hamas's command centers. Our next report tells you more.
Since the eruption of Israel-Gaza war on the 7th of October 2023, the border between Israel and Lebanon witnessed near-daily exchanges of fire between Israeli forces and Hezbollah, the Iran-aligned Lebanese militant group. After more than a year of hostilities between Israel and Hezbollah, that included 2 months of an all-out war, a ceasefire deal took effect on the 27th of November 2024, but the Israeli war machine continues its deadly march. Though the Lebanon's government has vowed to disarm Hezbollah, Israel insists it retains the right to defend itself by striking the Lebanese militant group. On the 20th of February, the Israeli military said that it had hit Hezbollah command centers in eastern Lebanon and targets linked to the Palestinian group Hamas in the south. The next day, Hezbollah said that 8 of its fighters had been killed in Israeli strikes, after Lebanon's health ministry said 10 people died in the east and 2 in the south. Following Israeli strikes, which killed 8 of its operatives, Hezbollah issued a warning that it would have no choice but to fight on. In Lebanon's eastern city of Baalbek, a mass funeral was held for Commander Hussein Mohammed Yaghi and one of the fighters, with hundreds of people gathered waving Hezbollah flags and chanting support. Long-suffering, conflict-weary, exasperated residents, bearing the brunt of frequent Israeli strikes, say that the war with Israel never ended.
If there was a truce, this wouldn't have happened. Am I right? Our home wasn't hit during the war. It was hit now. What truce? And we came to retrieve the belongings we left behind. The Israelis didn't let us. What truce? It's just talk.
Along with the fear of potential strikes, South Lebanon residents also have to contend with the frequent nerve-wracking buzz of Israeli drones. Not only have many people lost their homes in these attacks, but the residents lament that the area has been killed economically as well. Lebanon's government has said that it has almost completed its ceasefire commitment to disarm Hezbollah south of the Litani River and will need 4 months to complete the second phase. It is to be noted that Hezbollah has not fired on Israel since the truce came into force in November 2024 and has termed the decision of its disarmament hasty. In January, Lebanon filed a complaint with the United Nations detailing a total of 2,036 Israeli violations between October and December 2025 alone. But Israel continues to occupy parts of Lebanon, blocking the reconstruction of border villages and preventing people from returning to their homes. Given the U.S.-Iran tensions and Israel's belligerence by stepping up attacks on Lebanon, the situation resembles a powder keg. A little spark and the whole region could be up in flames.
The government of the Democratic Republic of Congo has launched several attacks on multiple fronts against the Rwanda-backed M23 rebels in the east of Congo. Reportedly, the local militias carried out several drone attacks on the northern lines of North Kivu in the town of Masisi. Now, the attack was aimed at the Rubaya mine that was captured by the Rwanda-backed M23 rebels in April of 2014. Now, according to the United Nations, the rebels had allegedly set up an administration that was running parallel to the Congolese state to regulate the operation of the Rubaya mines since the capture. The recent attack has also intensified a more than a 3-decades-long conflict in eastern Congo, where dozens of rival armed groups and foreign powers have long been eyeing control of the region's rich and valuable minerals.
Africa's second-largest country has been battling insurgency across various fronts, particularly along the east, where the Rwanda-backed M23 rebels have claimed the vast majority of the towns, including North Kivu. On Wednesday, the Kinshasa forces launched attacks on several fronts against the M23 rebels in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. The attack included drones, which struck the armed group near the mining town of Rubaya, which was claimed by the M23 rebels. More than 120 rebel groups are fighting with the National Armed Forces for power, land, and valuable mineral resources, which are estimated to be worth $24 trillion. The Rubaya mine produces around 15% of the world's coltan, dug manually by the locals who barely earn $1 each day. Control of this mine is the biggest prize in a long-running conflict in this Central African nation. The heavily armed rebels, whose stated aim is to overthrow the government in Kinshasa, has captured vast tracts of mineral-rich territory in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo in 2025, taking over the Rubaya mine in North Kivu province in April 2024. The M23 had set up an administration running parallel to the Congolese state to regulate the operation of the Rubaya mine since its capture. Last month, the Rwanda-backed rebels had launched an offensive on the strategic city of Uvira in the South Kivu province, drawing condemnation from the United States and further leading to a fragile peace deal between the Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda. Congo ranks among the 5 poorest nations in the world. The years-long insurgency has displaced thousands of people as fighting linked to the M23 rebel group spreads across parts of North and South Kivu, worsening an already dire humanitarian situation. Families are seen fleeing with few belongings, and assistance is struggling to keep pace as global funding decreases.
We were under death threats, which is why we fled, leaving all our belongings. With God's help, we also managed to get the children out. Someone help me with this flour that I'm needing. The children will eat, but they won't be full.
And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of World at War. If you want to reach out to me with any comments, feedback or suggestions, please feel free to do so on the ID that you're seeing on your screens. I'm your host, Mohammed Saleh, and I'll see you again next week.